The subject is the essence of spiritual progress. While speaking about progress, two things are to be carefully remembered. One thing is that progress is always systematic, pulsative. It never moves in a straight line. And the second thing is that the velocity and acceleration vary according to the variation in physical, psychic, and spiritual plane. In the case of so-called physical and intellectual progress, the variation in acceleration and also velocity takes place due to certain belligerent forces acting within and without the microcosm. In the physical plane, the most important belligerent force is the inertia of the earth. And in the psychic plane, in the intellectual stratum, the main belligerent forces are the different projections of mind. The difference in reflection and refraction in different psychic pabula. That is why I say that there cannot be any actual progress in the physical and psychic planes. There can only be progress in the stratum of spirituality. And this progress occurs also in the three levels according to the psycho-spiritual standard of that particular microcosm. By birth, all human beings are just like animals. They are bound by the fetters of so many passage and repose, bondages and enemies of mind. In this first phase, with the blessings of the Lord, they start their struggle. And what is this struggle? It is the struggle against those fetters. While moving towards the goal, in this struggle they are emboldened by the support of the Maya. This first phase of struggle in Tantra Sadhana is called Pasvachar in Sanskrit. For here, the spiritual aspirants are to some extent like animals, and so they fight against all those nooses of passage and repose is known as the fight of an animal. The Pasvachar in Sanskrit. Now while struggling against those binding principles, they badly need the grace of this Lord, and in their inner voice they address the Lord as Pasupati, the Lord of the animals. O Lord, I am a Pasu, an animal, and thou art my Lord, thou art Pasupati. So in the first phase of spiritual movement, Sadashiva or the Guru is known as Pasupati. Sarve cha pasva shanti talvad bhutale nara tesham gyan prakashaya veer bhava prakashitah veer bhavam sada prapya karmen devata bhavet. Now after this first phase is over, after the successful completion of the first struggle, the second one starts. This second struggle occurs both externally and internally. And for this, the sadhakas must be sufficiently bold. This boldness comes as a result of the first fight. In this second phase, the spiritual aspirants struggle like heroes and address their Lord as Vireshwar. So in this second phase of struggle, their Lord Sadashiva becomes Vireshwar, the Lord of heroes. Now the spiritual aspirants are no longer animals or pasus. They are heroes or viras. And in the final phase, they attain godhood step by step. Here the struggle is purely internal, controlling the devising propensities of the mind one by one. Now the aspirants are called devas or divine beings, and their course of action is known as Divyachar. In the first phase, there may be some physical obstacles, but these can be surmounted by the grace of the Lord. In the second phase, too, there are mental obstacles, but they too can be overcome by the grace of the Lord. For he clearly says, Devi esa gunmai mama maya duratyaya mamev je prapadyante maya metam tarantite. This maya, this depraving faculty, this avidya shakti is my maya. She is under my control. Shakti sah shivasya shakti. So, those spiritual aspirants who have surrendered at the altar of the Supreme need not be afraid of Maya, because the Lord before whom they have surrendered controls that very Maya. Devi esa gunmai mama maya duratyaya. This Maya of mine is insurmountable. But mamev je prapadyante. Those who have taken shelter in me, Maya metam tarantite, will easily surmount this Maya. So a spiritual aspirant need not be afraid of this Maya. She can do nothing because the Lord is with them. In Pashavachar and Virachar, they are helped by the Lord to fight against Maya. What is Divyachar? From the root Diva comes the word Deva, which means vibrational faculty, vibrational manifestation. The supreme cause is nominal. From it emerges the vibrational faculty and the entire universe. All the manifestations are nothing but a mess of so many vibrations, of so many wavelengths, and thus there is variety in the world. Prakaroti iti prakriti. Prakaram karoti iti prakriti. Now in the third phase, the spiritual aspirants become one with a particular expression and slowly they move towards the nucleus of the universe. That controls all the vibrations. If a particular vibration is called a Deva, the supreme controlling faculty of the Devas is called Mahadev. Tvabhiswaranam pranam pramam maheswaram Mahadev. Finally, the spiritual aspirants become one with the nucleus and then they control all those vibrational expressions, all those Devas. Then they themselves become Mahadev. You know, I told you that devotees are A-class intellectuals. Actually, they possess A-grade intellect. And not only that, they are cunning also. The devotees say, O Mahadev, I am not a philosopher. I do not know what sort of entity thou art, because I do not know philosophy. But this much I know, that thou art my controller, thou art my everything. Tau tattvam na janami kidrusho si maheswara jadryashi mahadev tadrasya namo namah. O Lord, I do not know what sort of entity thou art, but whatever thou art, to that entity I prostrate myself. Thus there are three tantric phases in spiritual progress: Pashavachar, Virachar and Divyachar. Now there is a naughty question in spiritual progress. All three avenues, Bhakti, Jnana and Karma, have been recognized by the sages. All these three are avenues of progress, no doubt, but you should remember that in Jnana or intellectual progress, in the final phase you will have to take shelter in and remain under the scope of karma and bhakti. Without action or karma, and finally while becoming one with the Supreme, you will have to resort to bhakti. If your progress is in the field of action of karma, you may move ahead to some extent, but in the final phase, you will have to resort to knowledge. And just before the ultimate union with the Supreme, you will have to resort to bhakti. But in the case of bhakti, from the first point up to the last, the devotees depend on bhakti only. They need not take shelter in jnana or karma. Now, altogether it is recognized that all these three approaches are correct. Human beings who have come here only for a limited span of time cannot spare much time to go through so many scriptures or perform so many actions. They will have to complete everything within the short span of their lives. So, the best choice of the spiritual aspirants is the path of bhakti. These obstacles, these fetters of Maya are the principal opposing forces, the most important belligerent forces. By individual effort, it is very difficult to surmount that ocean of Maya. For the Jnanis, the intellectuals, the goal is merely theoretical and impersonal. How can they expect a theoretical and impersonal entity to help them? And how can the Jnanis even approach him when for them his very existence is impersonal? So the Jnanis, although they have recognized the importance of Jnana or karma, have no future. They simply waste their valuable time, which is a very short span of hardly 100 years. And for the karmis or people of action, the desideratum is partly personal and partly impersonal. But the link between the impersonal and the personal undergoes some distortion. With the help of this distorted link, how can they expect to receive perennial grace for their spiritual progress from the Supreme? And how can they struggle against the all-pervading influence of Maya? So, the karmi, having no fixed desideratum and no fixed personal goal, no personal God, also have no future. The future is with the devotees and with no one else. You boys and girls, you should always remember that you have come here for a very short span of time. You must not misuse your valuable time in intellectual altercations or actional in fighting Kalyanam. So may you all be blessed.